On this week's episode of Whitetail Cribs, we're stopping in West Virginia to visit with Mike Taylor. Mike takes us around his trophy room and relives some of his favorite hunts over the years, including some Colorado elk hunts, some Ohio whitetails, and West Virginia bucks. If you'd like to help us out, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Now let's get into the episode.
The Exodus team is traveling around the United States to take a look inside the trophy rooms of some of the most interesting whitetail hunters in the country. From giant bucks, unique racks, and riveting stories, welcome to Whitetail Cribs.
All right, fellas, come on in. I'm Mike Taylor. Glad to meet you guys. Come on this way and I'll show you what you're here for. It's my kitchen. And here's my playroom, so to speak, where I spend most of my time. Lifetime of hunting, fishing. The elk I got in the bow in Colorado, I've shot 8 elk with a bow. Colorado and a couple in Idaho. That elk there is the second elk I ever killed with a bow. I think it was 248. But a buddy of mine, we were in Colorado and he'd been chasing this elk around the mountain all morning. All of a sudden there was a bunch of cows right there in front of us. And we froze. And the next thing you know, we look around the bank, we can see this pine tree flopping back and forth. And so John, he got around the bank and I stayed back around the call and I made a call and that thing come charging within 13 yards of me, shaking a tree, he bugled and peed all over himself and hooked the pine tree and throwed it right back over his back. And it's like 13 yards in front of me. So and I was down on my knees and anyway, he stood there and he looked over and finally saw John shaking and decided it's time to get out of Dodge, and he wheeled around and stopped and I shot him about 15 yards. This buck here I killed, been up to Wolf Island in Ontario, Lake Ontario, and come back from that hunting trip and went hunting the next day here in Ohio. It was real foggy and real wet. That next morning I got up and went over there and climbed up in the tree and I knew this deer was in there and I stayed out of there just because it was too dry. Early in October it was just too dry and I knew if I went in there, the way I had to sneak in there, I'd spook it. So I waited till it was a wet, foggy morning, snuck in there and it was about 9:30. 3 does come out past me and he was following them. So I got him there. This one I don't remember. It's killed it in the high, but I can't remember where it was at. This deer I killed also in a high. I killed it on another piece of property that joins the farm I used to have permission to hunt on. And it was one of those deals that I think it was the second weekend of the high season where they have 2 days just for gun season. And I actually, using the muzzleloader, shot that deer the first week, like on Thursday, and I missed it. It was like 50 yards wide open and I missed it. And then I think it was the following Saturday, I was about a half mile away from where I'd missed him and he come walking down over the bank and I got him. I said earlier, this deer, this West Virginia deer, I spent 3 seasons chasing this deer before I finally got him. Got him on a drive. My brothers, still like doing the old fashioned way, making drives, putting people on stand and fortunately for me, they liked me to stand because I stay put. And anyway, they made a drive and it come by and I got it. And this big 8-point, it scored 164 and a quarter, netted 161. I killed it on the farm I was talking about. I used to have permission to hunt on. Father and my brothers had timbered this piece of property and of course 2 years later it had grown up into a lot of mouthful rows and underbrush and it was good deer habitat. And anyway, I went hunting after work one evening, jumped up on a stump that was, I don't know, 3 foot up in the air. Still had another tree leaning out of it, and I jumped up on that so I could see over the brush. And right about dark, I heard something. I looked down over the bank through that brush, and I saw saw what I call a glowing rat because it was pretty close to being dark, and just see this white rat going through the brush. So I grabbed my grunt tube out and made a couple grunts, and the next thing I know, he stepped out in an opening, and I shot him. So, turkey I got here in West Virginia. Don't know if it was a tame turkey or a wild turkey. He was out in the middle of the woods, and he was a goblin, and called him in and had him mounted. This other buck, it's a West Virginia deer. This one is from Ohio. It's again another piece of property my dad and brothers were cutting timber on at the time. There's a field close by, and it was raining that evening. I went sneaking out into that field, and some does come up out of a gully, and he was following them, so that's when I was able to get him. These 3 deer are also all from Ohio. This one, new place I got to hunt, it was about 4 years ago, I think. And the first year you're allowed to use a straight-walled cartridge in Ohio. I had a 45-70, I was up in a tree stand, and saw him earlier in the season bow hunting, but didn't get an opportunity to get a shot at him. And I think it was the first morning, right after daylight, he come walking by, and I got him like 12-yard shot, perfect bow shot, but it's the way it goes. See him in bow season, they're 60 yards away, and you see him in gun season, they're 12 yards away. Like I said, these other 2 are also from Ohio. The big trout, I caught it in Virginia, 28 1/4 inches long, 10 pound, 2 ounces. And the bears, they came from Saskatchewan. I had got the black one. My son killed I guess it's a blonde or silver, cinnamon color, I don't know what you call it, but we call it a blonde. Deer in the back I killed up at the plant where I used to work. Antelope, killed it in Wyoming along with 3 of them. This one over in the corner, I think that one scored 72, and that one scored 70 with the bow. I killed them with the bow. This deer, it's that farm I used to have permission to hunt on. Knew he was in there. I saw him at a distance a couple times, and then one morning I was up in stand, and he come down an old logging road, and I made a grunt, and he turned and come right up past me, and I got him. I think he scored 157, netted 152, I believe. This deer here, an 8-point I killed up at the plant where I used to work. One in the middle, like I said, it was the first deer I killed in Ohio with a bow. I spent 13 days hunting before I got an opportunity to get him. This next deer isn't a real big deer, but it was a real old deer. I was hunting in a wide open field, and there was a couple locust trees out in this field, and I got some greenbriers around them, or multiple rows, and I got around, sit in a little stool back in that brush, clipped out some place and just sit back in it like to hide, and I just took a Tink 69 bottle and sit it out in the middle of that field like 35 yards away from me, and the wind was blowing up into the woods there. Sit there about 15 minutes, and he come walking down off the bank, put his nose right on it. That's when I got him. This big 10-point here, I think it scored 157, netted 152. That one was 152 and scored 148. I think I got those backwards. But anyway, this deer, I saw some big rubs the year before in deer season, and so the next fall, early season, I went and put a tree stand up. I think it was October the 15th. It was after I was coaching cross country in Williamstown at that time. We had a short practice that night, and took my stuff with me, and when I got through the practice, I ran there and jumped up in my stand, and in a small white oak thicket, and there about a half hour, and a couple of little button bucks come by and some does come by, and I looked over about 50 yards from me, and there this deer was standing there looking over the fence, and he was watching the does and the little button bucks feeding on those acorns. He probably stood there 20 minutes, and the only thing he'd do is flicker an ear. He's just watching, looking whatever was moving and making sure there wasn't anything to be alarmed of. And After about 20 minutes or so, he jumped the fence, and when he went by, he's like 10 yards when he went by, and I took the shot and got him. The deer in the background there, 10 point I killed in West Virginia, like when I was 16 years old, and like I said, I'll be 64 in June, so it's one of the first deer I killed. This big chested one there, it's from Manitoba. Used to go up there, I think 3 years I went up there with a guide. He's no longer in business, but went up there, and it's one of the ones that I got. Saw some awful big deer up there, just never got a shot at him. This next deer, it's one I killed this year in Ohio. This one here I killed up at the plant, I think 4 years ago maybe. And here, this deer is one my son killed out the ridge here. It's a West Virginia deer. Both those deer are West Virginia deer. This next one is 8 point, is one I killed in Virginia now, down next to Richmond. My brother lives there in Richmond. He's a coach at the University of Richmond, cross country and track coach. He and his wife Lori. He had this deer on camera. It's coming past. Oh, there's a fence there. This deer was showing up on his camera about dark, so he told me about it, and I went down there early muzzleloading season, and knew the deer was going past his camera just before dark, so I backed up about 300 yards into the woods, and lo and behold, right at dark, here he comes. So I got him with the muzzleloader. This other deer was from Ontario, Wolf Island and Lake Ontario. Crappie I caught in the High River at the dam, Will Island Dam. And the other antelope I got it at Wyoming also. It's a big mule deer. I found that. That's not one I killed. I found that when I was in Colorado elk hunting. So I thought it was pretty impressive, so I carried it out of the woods. Glad you come and saw my deer. Appreciate your filming them and talking about them. Enjoyed it. Catch you later another day. Come back anytime you want to.